Hey guys, I'm processing my tension right now. It's a great day. The wind, the weather, everything's perfect. I'm in my backyard and I'm using the term processing tension because before any meeting or any discussion, it's good to let the other person, in this case you, know what I'm going through, which I had a lot to handle last week with, I would say, the kings in my life. And I'm going to share with you a little bit more about why they're kings. So before we go into that, I wanted to go over the agenda for today. So I wrote it in my handy dandy notebook, the agenda. So the agenda for today is we're going to be processing my tensions. So then you know where I'm coming from, which is, the mood, I guess, to the video. And then I'm going to talk about my experience as an ENTP with ENTJs, INFJs, and ESTJs. This will give you an insight to my heart, which is my feelings, my mind, my thinking functions, and my soul. Soul are things I know and I don't know, the clairvoyance and claircognizance, clairsentience elements. That in which is a little bit trickier to explain. And then I'm going to end the video talking about, my choice of outfits, which is my dress code for today, and the makeup and items I use to make myself feel comfortable for the video. And okay, so here we go. So to start with processing tensions, I wanted to make sure that I'm as natural and as honest and real as possible when I'm filming these videos for you guys. So how I ensure that is there's only going to be one take. So you get the raw first take. Secondly, I've made myself as comfortable as possible by wearing clothes I usually wear at home and going out. That's usually like when I go to the gym. I think when I go to the gym, when I go to the beach, that's when I'm most comfortable. And when I say gym, it's really yoga. And, like my comfort items, that could be like my robe and my pillows. And then I'm talking about people who really matters to me, because for an ENTP, I think that our relationships with people is the number one most important thing in their life. So I'm talking about some people who are very important in my life. But instead of talking about them in a extremely specific manner, like talking about them as individuals, I'm going to talk about them in a more stereotypical, grouped, and theoretical way. And that's the Myers-Briggs personality type, because I know their personality type. I can say, hey, with INFJs, ENTJs, and ESTJs, this is how I feel about them, think about them, and this is how I'm processing my tensions with them, etc. So to begin, I like to think of interactions with people in conceptual terms. And I think that's how ENTPs think. Like, we think of things in concepts. So I'll give you an example and how it relates to startups, because I wanted to make sure that this is applied to the startup world. So like today, I was looking at a website and I was talking to an ESTJ and an INFJ about building out my websites. I don't have my website built out yet. And the reason why for that is because I'm way more focused on the engine. So the engine is like the operations of the company, right? Like what makes a company run, not just like how the company looks from perspective, like the sales, the marketing, the website. It's like the people that makes up the company, like the founders, and the money that's like powering it up, like, the investors, etc. So I was thinking, like, okay, let's say $250,000 invested in the company. How do I break that down in allocation? So, like, the reason why I use the number 250,000 is because, based on industry standards, this was communicated to me by an ESTJ. Not, oh, I dropped my pen. Not an ENTJ or an INFJ, because I don't think that, and by the way, I just want to make sure, because I'm assuming that the viewer is knowledgeable of what these personality types stand for. So in case if you're not knowledgeable, let me brief you real quick. So an ENTJ is, I consider them the CEO of CEOs. They're called the commander, based on the genius systems. The INFJ is the advocate. I call them my lawyers. And the ESTJ is the supervisors. I call them my super advisor. So the commander, the lawyer, and the supervisor, or super advisor. So these are the people that I dealt with last week, and today I dealt with 2 of the 3. Actually, I dealt with all 3. So yeah, it's like there are times where I deal with one personality types more than the other. But I wanted to make this video specifically on like how to apply the knowledge of understanding their dimensions into the real world and how to use that within a startup. So back to what I was talking about, you know, your initial seed money for your startup. So let's say it's $250,000, right? The ESTJ will tell you, hey, go out there and fundraise this money. They're not going to tell you really like the implications, but they will tell you what to do. And I think that if you're looking for someone to tell you what to do, you go to the super advisor. They'll tell you what to do, and you can get that from a simple email, because their emails are short, direct, to the point, as if, you know, if you were talking to them in person. It's about the same way. Okay, and I'm working backwards now. INFJ is the advocate type, and you want to make sure that these people really believe in you, because at the end of the day, there's a level of diplomacy when you're dealing with people, and you want to make sure that you feeling check with these people, right? Because in a capitalistic society, or, you know, coming from like the ego producing something, like we may not be in tune with what like society would accept. So always check in with your lawyer. And then, you know, last but not least is the ENTJ, which is the commander type. So the commander, I would highly recommend to go to them only for like really high level discussionary. And it's not about like how to do something, but more about like maybe on the market at large. Like they may have experience piloting some extremely popular brands, businesses, etc. And they're very, very good at being efficient with their resources. So if you're partnering up with an ENTJ, yeah, maybe it's just you and that person, and the two of you could, you know, start a company with maybe only, I don't know, a few $1,000s from each party invested into like their own expenses and the time that it took. For me, I kind of chose to run my company alone. Like, I believe that I like being the lone wolf in the beginning, because I am a very responsible and helpful person. So if I include somebody into my inner circle or my inner being, I'm going to want to protect them, save them, make them money, all that. And, you know, it's a lot of energy and effort. So I keep a healthy distance with everybody. But these people I consider my kings. And when I say kings, and remember when I talked about like applying principles to maybe frameworks that you already know. So like one framework that I know is like a deck of playing cards. So a deck of playing cards have 52 cards. But I consider it 54 because I'm counting the 2 jokers. Okay, so let's say 54 cards. I think that at any one time, some person can play 2 decks of cards very well. 2 hands, right? You can play one card with one hand, another card with another hand. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some super beings that can do 4 decks. You know, they're playing with the left foot and the right foot. But for me, I think that's enough. Dealing with 108 people, 2 decks of cards is enough for me. And if you look at a deck of two decks, right? 2 decks. You're going to have 8 kings total. 8 cards of kings. That means, let's say, 8 people that could be considered a king at any given time. Those people, I think, because there's only, if you look at like number 1 to 10, and then, well, just ace to 10, right? And then you look at, so that's 10. And then you have your jack, your queen, your king, and your joker. So really there's only 9, right? There's only 9 categories. So I have to split the 16 personality types within the 9 categories. And I'm starting with my kings. And I'm calling, and the kings I'm choosing are those 3 people, or those 3 categories I told you about. So this is just kind of like laying down the foundation, like the most like rudimentary or most basic level knowledge, because I can get really intricate with this more advanced levels, which I can create a second video. But the first video, I just want you guys to kind of understand these basics, and then I guess I'll go a little deeper into the how to apply into the startup world. So let's say you have 250,000 to start up a company. An ESTJ will tell you to go and raise that money. They wouldn't really tell you the implications of raising that. So my experience is that they'll tell me to go and raise, money from friends and family and from angel investors. But it's very important to me to know how the game is played. I'm not just going to go and do something without really, really knowing it. It took me 3 years, honestly. It took me 3 years to really kind of like figure it out. And I did it the right way because how the 250,000 split up, which I wrote down in my other handy dandy notebook, is 100,000 was generated through sales. 100,000 was based on the sweat equity of all the founders and involved parties, and another 50,000 is from angel investors. So if you look at the percentage ratio of that, that's about 40% from sales, 40% from sweat, and 20% in debt. So I would, highly recommend that everybody who's starting up a venture to go no more than 20% in debt, no matter what your life situation is. Me personally, I will not partner up with somebody who's, 200,000 in student loan debt. Let's say like their capacity is like $1 million, and this is like based on like insurance terms, right? Like an insurance company will figure, okay, they will protect, liability up to $1 million. So let's say 20% of that's 200,000. So somebody spends 200,000 on student loans or education debt in this D and age, where there's YouTube and free resources and sponsorships and scholarships, etc. I would kind of see them as, they've really invested in their education. They must really know what they're doing. I might hire them as an analyst. I might hire them as a staff. But to partner up with someone who's currently 20% of their net worth in debt, or 20% debt, I mean, it's just too high, I believe. So I'm saying that as in, like, look at your business in the same way, right? Like, if you have a business that's valued at like $1 million at the bare minimum, $1 million, you want to raise 200,000 in debt. I think that's too high. Yeah, I definitely think that's too high. So I'm thinking like you should only be doing about $50,000 in debt. And that's why I have $50,000 worth of debt from my first company that I'm starting. And I'm talking about, the language of an ESTJ right now, because an INFJ may not understand what I'm saying, and an ENTJ would be thinking how they could be more efficient than I am in securing those resources and even more, like allocating those resources even more properly. But I want to give an example of what I did, because I feel like what I did is very accomplishable to the entrepreneurs and the startup founders of whom I've helped on a consulting basis. So going back to the 100,000 in sales. So the 100,000 in sales is very accomplishable by working with an ENTJ and an INFJ. And this is how you do it. So for an ENTJ, you want to pick at least one ENTJ per quarter, and preferably to have a different ENTJ in which you focus on every quarter, and have them help you with the big B2B acquisitions, because they're going to have the highest level connections. I mean, they're the CEOs. So they could be members of a board of directors. They may own 25% of a company. They may already, have membership to a publicly traded company. You're just going to have to do your research on that. And I would say steer away from what somebody have already accomplished versus their potential. I like to kind of divide it up by someone who's already accomplished for half of the time, and then someone who's like on the up and coming, to keep up with, current time and trends, because it's not useful to talk to somebody who's like currently building their success, because they haven't had that experience. But then talking to someone with experience dating back 25 years ago, they're 25 years behind. So you want to have a really balanced group of people to go after. And then for the INFJ, which I will conclude with today, is the INFJs are the most compatible people to me. So they're my, they're not just my advocates or my lawyers, they're my partner. Like, they're the people who I trust the most. And I think it's because, for me, I don't ever see myself as somebody with a high IQ, but I'm very good at pattern recognition, and I'm very good at concepts. Where I struggle is, I may not be the best at details-oriented tasks, and an INFJ is excellent at that. So partnering up with someone who's an INFJ, I know that, they're going to be the yin to my yang. So you need that balance, and when it comes to protecting your king, it's very hard to try to protect all three people at once, because what happens when they fight for your attention or they fight for your affection, which I have to go through this year after year, quarter after quarter. It's just a lot of infighting because people are competing, and if you have the right type of people, they are going to be competitive because they're likely high achievers or top producers, and you know what, let the best people win. Really, people will self-select in and they will self-select out. Let natural selection take their course. And this is just my perspective from an ENTP's viewpoint. So there may be a different, viewpoint. But I would say, protect these people, keep them in your life. Even if you get into a fight, which I got into a fight with an ENTJ, longtime friend of mine, which I'm probably going to have to do a separate video about it because it's just going to bring my energy down because I hate fighting with this person. But at least we cleared the air. And by clearing the air, we get closure. So I think that when I have a disagreement with somebody I really, really care about, if I don't clear the air and get closure, it will wreck me into next quarter, and it will impact my next year, and it'll, affect my performance. So I would suggest, if you're a CEO, if you're starting up a company, if something bothers you, go clear the air, or do self-help, or go see a therapist. Go do something about that. If your partner, your number one partner, like my INFJ, if they're unhappy or if they need you, be there for them and protect them and give them the support. My INFJ, this weekend, instead of going out and focus on things that makes me happy, I stayed home to do things that make him happy, and even if that puts me in a position of doing more manual labor, because I like to do mental labor, more manual labor than I'm used to, it actually puts me in a better place. I feel way better. So it helps me with morale. And then I connected with my ESTJs on just business numbers, hey, how much would it cost for a sprint, or what do I need to do to move this business relationship to the next level. So you always need different people in your life, and you always need to continue to progress with those people and grow. So